Hello everyone and welcome to Creative Mastermind. Now, in front of me you can see a ton of different colors and a ton of different variations as to how big or how far apart each one of these little brackets is. Now, what I mean by that is this one's quite a few far apart, this one's only a couple. Now, this is a great tool that not many people realize exists in Adobe Illustrator. Now, Illustrator is a great program for vector work and for anything dealing with Cmyk, as well as RGB, depending on what you're trying to do with it. However, I stumbled upon this, and it saved me so much time and has helped me in the long run with many designs. Now, no matter what size document you use, whether it's 8.5 by 11, whether it's it doesn't matter the size document you use for this. But, however, it does matter a little bit Cmyk versus RGB. You want to have whatever you're working in, your color mode. But, of course, we all know that if you click on your foreground color, it'll allow you to see the RGB versus the Cmyk. So, it's not a terrible thing to pick the wrong thing and have to go back and look. But, just to save yourself some time, choose whatever color mode that you want to already be in. Now, all of these palettes were created the same way. There are a couple of varieties in which to make a palette, or I wouldn't say varieties, a few different techniques to create a palette, create it this way. Now, first and foremost, sorry, I've got some windows here that just don't make any sense. First and foremost, you want to have a document, whatever size you want it to be, and you don't want to have any stroke on your square. Not that it'll cause an issue, but it'll streamline your process quite a bit. Now I make a square, and if I hold down Shift, it'll even it out for me. So it's completely the same size, and I'm just going to choose a random blue. Now then I'm going to hold down my Alt key, and I'm just going to click, and I'm going to drag my little guy over here. Now, these two squares are the same color. However, if I change the color of this one, oh, that's a hideous color. Let's not do that one. Let's do this. So if I take these two squares and I select them both, whether you click and drag, whether you select one and then click Shift, and select the other one, doesn't really matter. But what you're going to want to do is go to Object, Blend, and Blend Options. Now, there are a couple different ways to do this. There is smooth color, specified steps, and specified distance. Now, each one of these does their own thing, but you do end up with a color variation in the end. Now, smooth color is much more your gradient color, where if I chose these guys align to path, since there's a section between the two instead of align to page, if we align to the path, and you choose smooth color and click OK. Now it won't do it, as you can see. What it will do, what you have to do, is you have to go to Object, Blend, and Make. And now I have a perfect gradient from that color to the other color. And if I scale this gradient up, it'll increase the way between each one that you see. And if I make it smaller, it's much quicker flow as opposed to when it was really big. Now that is the smooth color. You can't tell the steps it took from point A to point B to get that gradient effect. Now the next one on that list was specific steps, And let's choose a red for this. And then let's choose our second color. Oopsie. Wrong options here. Let's choose this green. Christmas is coming! I'll be ready for it for sure. Okay, so we have these two. And again, select both your objects. Whenever you're making a palette, it doesn't matter how many... Oops. Been using a Mac for too long. How many steps you have between point A and point B, Even if you have a point C, you need to have all of the points that you want as part of the palette to be selected. So I don't need this one. I'm just going to select this one and go back to object, excuse me, and go to blend and blend options, and then from smooth color to specified steps. Now specified steps, and align to path, because trust me, it'll make your life a lot easier. Specified steps is how many color sections you want, color squares, from point A to point B. Now you can have as low as 3, and we'll go ahead and do that one just so you can see it. And you see it only has 3 sections between that point and that point, so your palette is much more, I would say much smaller. Not much more anything, but it's much smaller comparative to if we do the same thing. We drag this palette down here, except we choose to do 10. You can see the difference on a smoother scale as to such an abrupt scale as you have on this top one here. Now, if you might have noticed that when I did that, when I changed my blending options, it automatically changed it. Now, the thing about this is that you can do that because you've already done the action. You're just changing the steps itself. So I can do that again, and from 20 steps, from 10 steps, I can make it 25. And it'll do it. It's almost as smooth as a smooth color. But you can still tell, if you get really close to this, you can still tell the steps in which... I have all this crap over here. Whoopsie! Let's go up there. You can still tell the steps in which it took you to get. You can see the little words today. Each different square and how it gets to point A to point B. Now, as opposed to the smooth color up here, where you really can't tell the way it moves. You really can't tell the difference it makes. Now, each one of these has this little bar across the centerpiece here. Now, if I were to take my white arrow tool, and I were to make this really big, it would then, in turn, make my palette bigger and my steps farther apart. But if I were to make this smaller, you can see now this one has 25 steps from point A to point B. Now those 25 steps you can no longer see as well. However, what you can do is choose it, and you can go to, where'd it go? Really? All the way up here? Object, blend, and expand, and it will give you all the different ones. So then if you ungrouped it, you could pull out specific pieces if you wanted to pull out whatever for whatever project you're working on. Now, so smooth color, we have smooth color up here, we have specific steps here, and now specific distance. Now, distance works the same, quite a bit like the previous. Now, where did my color go? Oh, it's hiding back here because I kept moving everything around. Let's choose this color, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy with my Alt or Option, depending on if you're on a PC or Mac. And then I'm gonna use this light pink color. I like these colors. And when we go up to blend and to blend options, now we have a distance. Now, like before, we can choose the distance. So if we just want 1 inch worth of space, click OK, blend, make. It only made 1 inch. So it only made 1 step. However, if we were to take our lovely little thing right here and drag this, you can see how different this would be. So if we go back and we change this, instead of 1 inch, we make it, say, 5 inches. We still have 1 space. The larger your number, the farther apart things are. So if your blank, your thing is really small, you're not going to get as much coverage. You're going to get one space maybe, but the less the number, say if I chose 0.25, excuse me, you see I get a lot more items inside my palette here. So the lesser the number in this case, the more palettes you can get into a smaller space. But the larger the number, the harder it is unless you drag your palette out with your little white arrow tool. Well, you get the ones that you're looking for. And of course, like the previous ones, you can drag this one out and it'll... Now this is almost smooth color. It's been dragged out so far because each section is only so far apart from each other. Now, the possibilities of this particular tool are kind of limitless in the fact that you can use it for so much. Say you need a gradient background for a project you're working on, and you know what color you want it to start and what color you want it to end. You can easily do it this way, because then if you have a certain way you want it to be, or you have a 3-color especially, let's go ahead and do that real fast. 3-color is the gradients are great. The tools here for gradients are great, but they kind of get a little impossible sometimes because you're only doing it a certain way. You do have quite a few options, but it's not as... I don't like using it as often because I feel I have a little bit more control with this particular item as I do with other ones. That could personally just be me. I honestly don't know, but it's possible it could be tons of people. But I like using this tool to make gradients because then, say I got these 3, and I want to make a smooth color out of them. And I blend them. I get this really, well, it wasn't straight, so obviously, but I get this really nice, oh boy, this really nice gradient out of them. And as far as my line is, and I can also straighten up my gradient too. You can get quite a bit of distance out of this one object. And even if you don't want, you want this to be a very little one on this end, it can be very, very little on this end. But it's a really great tool to know how to use and to use. Whoa. Ah! But it's one of those things where it's great for gradients. It's great for being able to make palettes. I've made so many palettes here, and quite a few of them I have used. If you're good at making palettes, then absolutely go for it. Do it every day of natural born life. I'm not the greatest at making palettes, so it's kind of frustrating for me sometimes when I have a project and I'm not able to get what I need to get done as quick as I can. And the thing that I love about this is that I can get, I know I want to use this color, like a few weeks ago I used this one up here. I know I wanted a light green and a dark green, but I wanted medium colors in the middle that I could use that would be effective and would work well. And the best way I knew how to do that was to use this, and it gives me some medium greens in here that I can use for other things, subtler things. So it is a really nice way to make a palette. It's not a perfect way to make a palette, but it is quite a nice way to quickly make a palette with as many steps as you want, as few steps as you want, or a smooth transition from one to the other. Now all of these don't have a smooth gradient. These are all simply the specified steps or specified distance. Mostly because they're here for a reason and I'm going to use them, so I'd rather not have a gradient for this particular palette. I have another saved AI file of just gradients that I use in backgrounds and use in banners and stuff like that. It makes my life so much easier to have gradients saved on hand that I know I can resize and I can apply to other things. So you just have to remember that there are great tools in AI, even if no one really realizes they're there. Experiment with this tool. I beg you, experiment with it. It's such a nice tool to use, and it's so worth the time to experiment. Because there are so many possibilities, whether you align to the page or align to the path. I normally just align to the path because at point A to point B is so much easier. But there are so many possibilities. You can go for as little or as much as you want. There's no limit as to, well, maybe RAM wise, but there's no limit, just your imagination. If you want to only have these colors or only have those, and nothing is stopping you from adding into that either. If you decide this is the palette you want to use and this is the palette you want to use, by all means use them both, mix them up. Like I showed you earlier, you can go to Object and expand any of your palettes, and then those palettes now are all anchors themselves. So if I were to ungroup this, they are all individually their own little pieces. So maybe I like these better than I like these ones, and I'm only going to use these down here. It literally is left up to you what you do with the palettes that you make. I encourage you to do this. It is so much fun, and it's so worth trying. And like you see here, I have so many palettes, and some palettes may not work out. Some palettes may be too close and you need less steps between them. By all means, less steps between them, but it all depends on what you want and how you want to make your palettes. Well, hopefully in some way this has been enlightening to you. If not, I hope the next one is. This is a really quick and easy way to make palettes and to make them effectively, and to make gradients, smooth color gradients, and being able to choose exactly what colors you have for your gradient and being able to control it pretty well. Thank you for watching, and give a thumbs up if you like this video, and so I know to make more. But subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys next time.